First of all, I would like to welcome Dr. David Aaker and Professor Varsha Jain for this podcast, and would like to thank them for taking out time to have us for this podcast. I would just like to ask Professor David Aaker and Professor Varsha Jain if they can talk a bit about the book, Future of Purpose-Driven Branding, and then we can start the session.
Okay, well, I'm Dave Aaker. I'm talking to you from California, and I'm very excited to be here for several reasons. First, it's I have a long relationship with Wiley. They have been a publisher of mine for many years, and I'm very excited that they've taken an interest in promoting our latest book. Second, I am excited about the book. I think it's really an important book. It really introduces a whole new way of looking at social programs, a way that will make them thrive, will make them more effective than they are now. And I'm excited to have Varsha as a co-author and help me introduce these ideas to the Indian population. I've over the last several years become really attached to India and the Indian management community. And so I'm just delighted to be here.
Thank you, Dave. I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you so much, Wiley, for being so energetic and passionate. And it's a pleasure to be with the entire team and to be the co-author of Professor Aaker, because this is a very fascinating book which we are introducing to the Indian market, which talks about the purpose-driven branding, and a lot of Indian brands across different product categories which we have introduced in the book has actually implemented, executed, ideated the purpose-driven branding approaches and strategies pretty well, which we have introduced across all the chapters. And we have also used a very inclusive approach of ensuring that we are capitalizing on small-scale industries as well as MNCs and mid-sized companies, because all of them are using purpose-driven branding pretty well in the Indian market. We have also used that for different type of product categories like beauty care products, like cosmetics, like ice cream brands, and also the services, which includes the insurance services as well as the banking services. So the whole idea of with which Professor Aaker has curated, assimilated, developed this phenomena of purpose-driven branding is very well ideated for the Indian market. And we are sure that a lot of Indian brands and the brands who are working across the globe will be able to use that pretty well for the Indian market, because India is a market which is ready for this type of initiatives which the companies can actually take. So very excited about this particular initiative.
Great. I would thank Dr. Aaker and Professor Varsha Jain for the beautiful introduction of the book. So we have a few questions here. This is for Professor Varsha Jain. Ma'am, we all know that Professor David Aaker is known as the father of branding across the globe. So I would just like to know what about your experience working with him, and why did you choose this book only to begin your journey with Professor David Aaker?
So thank you, Syed, for asking this question. And I am smiling because I feel very nostalgic. I started my student journey while reading his books and papers. So
Right.
whatever little orientation I have about branding is coming from his scholarships, which he's been providing since a long time. And I have a very high respect to Professor Aaker because of his phenomenal contribution, which he has been making since a long time. We are able to reach up to this level now that we are able to create new knowledge for the Indian market. And it's a pleasure working with him. He is an amazing mentor. He is an amazing co-author, and I'm learning so much every moment, every initiative that we are taking for the book. Book itself was a very good learning opportunity. And besides learning, we also want to give back to the Indian community, Indian market. And while working in the branding space, I realized that India is doing a lot of work, but it is at a stage where it needs to be branded. So if you do the social program, and that is what Professor Aaker always says, that it's good to do it, but you need to brand it.
Yeah.
And that is where I think if the Indian brands and the brands who wants to operate in India are using those strategies and approaches, that would really work very well. Because doing right thing is good, but you have to really brand it well in order to create an impact, in order to inspire the consumers and to connect with them to the different segments. So that was the whole idea, to work on this book, and of course to work with Professor Aaker.
Thank you, ma'am, for the lovely answer. Uh, Another question I have is for Dr. David Aaker. Sir, we know that you have written so many books on branding, marketing research, strategic marketing. And so we would just like to know what was your inspiration and idea about behind writing this specific book on future of purpose-driven branding?
Well, I just think it's such an important issue that's facing society today, and it's an important issue facing more businesses. And I've always been interested in the idea of a higher purpose and doing social good. But so I sort of have been accumulating ideas over time, and I decided this is the right time to write this book. I just think it's the time. We have such enormous challenges facing society. We have climate change. We have resource depletion. We have inequality, massive inequality that seems to be growing. We have
No.
people striving to live healthier lives, to deal with stress and so forth of social media. And so, as a society, we need to address these problems, and government can only do so much. Government really is not really well suited to look at localities, to look at segments, and they look at the problem at such a broad scope, and they're not very good at implementing solutions either. And business comes to the effort with resources, with agility, and with talent, with people, and they can make a contribution. And so it's really necessary for business to step up in order to really address these problems. And so then that raises the question: what motivates business? And of course, one motivation is just to do good because it's their responsibility as a member of society. But it turns out that such a motivation is kind of fragile, especially when a new management team comes in, because the social effort is regarded as a resource drain, taking resources away from more productive investments, no more necessary investments. And so as a result, these social efforts don't get the resources they need to grow and thrive. Sometimes they are with the resources are withdrawn, and so it's not a healthy situation. And so what's needed is a totally new perspective, and that is that the social program is part of the business strategy. It enables it, it enhances it, and if you take that perspective, everything changes. And now the social program doesn't have to struggle for resource support. The business is doing that as part of their business strategy. And so the problem is that if you look at the social effort, which is very impressive in big firms and large, this is what it looks like. There's a lot of grants. There's a lot of volunteering hours. There's a lot of energy goals with hundreds of programs. Let's have better light bulbs, better routes for our trucks to implement those energy goals. And there's ESG reports with dozens and dozens of dimensions, and the end result, it looks ad hoc. It looks not focused. Uh, it looks ineffective. It looks like the same as all companies do, and 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 therein lies the problem. We have to somehow translate that into something that helps the business, and the key to that is to have signature programs. Signature programs are programs that not only impact but inspire and represent a long-term commitment. And as Varsha said, are branded. And branding is so important because it's a key to communication. It's a key to making sure that employees and customers and other stakeholders understand and are inspired about what you're doing. Because if they do, then the business will thrive. The business will get enhanced financial performance, and therefore it'll be on a sound footing. So we have this win-win situation. We get the business to support a social program, and then we have the social program that's driving up the business, and the business is even more incented to build the social program.
Okay. Very well said, sir. As you mentioned that as a society, we can come up with lots of efforts, and as a business, I mean, a business person or a business house can, push that effort for the global good. So, and you have very beautifully mentioned the signature social program in your book. So, I would just like to ask, can you share some examples which can throw some light on kind of signature social programs being run across the globe or that you have covered in your book?
Well, one program that I talk about is the Lifebuoy Help a Child Reach Five program that was started in India and
Hmm.
in rural India, and it was about elevating their effort to get people to wash their hands better and more frequently, and and they gave it a brand name, Help a Child Reach Five. It's called, and they put that brand or that program into three small localities, and uh, and and they made a video of each of those three experiences that got 44 million views. I mean, this is a bar soap. It got 44 million views, and but that's one type of program where the company has controlled and developed a program of their own. But it also is the case that that's hard to do, and sometimes it's better to adopt an existing nonprofit program, and that's what the financial services company Thrivent did when they adopted Habitat for Humanity, and that's done so much to elevate the energy of the brand, the image of the brand, and the engagement of the brand at Thrivent. Now, the examples I'm familiar with are mostly um, Western examples, and Varsha has introduced into the book some Indian examples. So maybe she could speak to some examples that she is values.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
So,
yeah, please, ma'am, please, can.
yeah, so I just wanted to mention and build upon what Professor Ikas has mentioned. In fact, the signature program that you're talking about, Dove has taken an initiative, which is part of the book, a worldwide initiative to take a lot of workshops and, to empower women, to make them confident, and to make sure that free being me, that is something which they always use in their campaigns. So it is not restricted even to the Western world and the US, but it is also for India, where they have taken the initiatives to work on the positive aspects of the body shape, image, and embracing the diversity. And the beautiful aspect of this entire campaign is that their goal is by 2025, they want to break the stereotypes among the young people. By 8 million people should have a different perspective altogether about this initiative which they have started. So I think this is a brand which is Dove, which has taken the initiative from the US, went to the different global markets, including India. And that is exactly what we are talking about, that it's about identifying the spots and the issues which are rooted in the society, saying that, okay, you have this issue, let us fix it together and work on some purposes which will benefit and create a win-win situation, what Professor Aaker was talking about, so that all the stakeholders are benefited. And India being a patriarchal society, of course, we have to break the stereotypical thinking as well about all these beauty, so called perfection. And acceptance is quite high in those regards. And I'm sure that whatever target they have set up for themselves, they are able to do that. So that is something which I just wanted to quote besides what we are discussing. And there are a bunch of other examples as well, which we have quoted in the book, which, for example, the other one is about Tata Tea, which is actually very insightful and a very good initiative which Tata Group has taken. And Tata Tea actually collaborated with a rare planet where they have hired the artisans from different parts of India, and they are actually providing the tea in cooler, and where the paintings are coming from different states, and the art is being projected to the entire world, that what different states of India resembles their culture, their subculture, their heritage, and we should be proud of it. And that is something which Tata always work upon. And besides that, they have taken so many initiatives for providing scholarships for underprivileged kids, which Tata Trust works upon, and also the cancer hospital which they have in India. So those are some of the Tata initiatives which we have listed in the book. And there are other bunch of examples which where we talk about Teach India initiatives, where we also talk about different initiatives which Reliance has taken as a whole group in the country. But besides that, I also wanted to mention a startup which is a Niman shoe, which is a startup where the speciality is that creating the premium shoes from plastic bottles. Now, that is something which is also very important because they are making the formal shoes, they are making sports shoes. And as Professor Aaker was talking about sustainability and the different goals which we have to keep in mind while we are operating into the business world. And this is not only the initiative, the point I'm making is that it's an initiative of the startups as well. So India, as I mentioned earlier, is doing a lot of work, but it has to be branded properly. And this book is going to really help the startups, mid-scale companies, as well as the large-scale organizations at a wider scale, and it would help them to brand their initiatives in the better way. Because I would like to quote, Tata Group, where they started this initiative long back in 1938, and before that, when actually the Jamshedji Tata had this initiative of building the entire community and society together and working towards the business enterprises. So I think it is ingrained in the system. It is there in the culture. It's just that we also executed it while doing business. But as Professor Aaker has mentioned, we don't brand it well. And that is where the book is going to act as a catalyst.
Okay. Ma'am, if I'm not wrong, there is one more company, Vatika, which sells coconut oil, and I have seen their ads where they say that from each bottle, 1 rupee will go towards the child education. So, ma'am, I would just like to ask here. You have already included and quoted so many examples for this signature programs. How does it helps and in enhancing the business's brand visibility, image, and customer loyalty? Can you throw some light on that?
Sure. Thank you, Sayed, for quoting Vatika example. I think I agree with you because those are certain initiatives that Vatika has taken, Unilever has taken, and what
Mm,
Professor Baker has mentioned about LIGO as well. So a
mm,
lot of initiatives are being taken, and why we take this initiative is because, see, at the end of the day, everybody knows that you are into the business world, but what is important to all the stakeholders, including consumers, is that how you are giving back to the communities, how you are helping the society, how you are not only working on your enhancement and betterment, but you are actually working with the people and using inclusive strategies and solving their problems, social problems, and societal problems as well. So I would quote one study which I did with Northwestern, and while I was the visiting scholar. And what we figured out in that study, it was a longitudinal study across 20 categories of brands. What was happening is that the brand differentiation was not coming up. If you talk about shampoo, a simple product, there also there's so much variety that is available. There's hardly any difference. But what is the difference is how that particular shampoo, like you mentioned about Vatika, how that is creating that impact, inspiring the people, and they feel good while using the product because it is connected to the social goals. Ultimately, the point of differentiation will come only when you are running your business which are rooted through purpose. Otherwise, it is very difficult because at the functional attributes of
yeah.
any product or service, you cannot differentiate. And the point of differentiations can only escalate when you are creating those differences while making an impact on the society. So that is something which is very inspiring for the Indian market, as well as, when you spoke about the image, of course, the image is what? Image is created through the users, consumers, and the prospective users. And when they feel that the brand is doing so much, for example, what I spoke about Tata Tea or the startup, or even what Urban Care hospitals are doing for the vision which they want to work on for the poor people, of course, the image of the brand escalates because everybody knows that you are not only working for your own benefit and mending money, but you are also helping the communities, underprivileged kids,
Mm.
underprivileged, people who are not so much educated enough, but your brand is helping them.
Let
So
me add,
that is, yeah, please.
let me add to what Varsha said. Brand equity in my framework has got three components. One is image, and Varsha is talking about image and how a social program can elevate your image and create differentiation. But there are two other dimensions of brand equity that are also influenced by a social program. And one is energy or visibility or awareness, and that's really an important, decisive part of brand equity. And you just look at Lifebuoy. I mean, they make bar soap. They make bar soap. You can't possibly get visibility and energy by talking about bar soap. But when you talk about Help a Child Reach Five, people know about it. They share it. 44 million views. It's a lot of energy and visibility they can't get any other way. I mean, Varsha mentioned some companies that do have an offering that does social good, but there are companies that make bar soap, and they need this to generate energy and visibility. The other dimension of brand equity is engagement and brand loyalty, engagement, and uh, and that's a little different than image. And if you look at, for example, the company I mentioned that has adopted Habitat for Humanity, the home building a nonprofit that provides homes for people in need. Well, they got in the 17 years they've been connected, they got 7.2 million hours of volunteering amongst their customers and employees. That's engagement. And so you have as Varsha said, you have an element of what the brand stands for, social good, but it's one thing to understand that relation, it's another to experience it. And that's a whole new level of brand strength. And so what a social program, a signature program can do is provide a new level of engagement.
Okay. So when we talk about business and society, to work in tandem, work in hand. So what kind of research should a business do to, create or launch a societal program? Uh, can you throw some light on that?
Well, that's a really, really good question. It turns out that it's not easy to do what we're proposing in this book. It's just not easy to find a program that suits you, that you can be passionate about, that you have the resources that can make a contribution. It's not easy. And so um, it's really important to keep your eyes open. One of the best ways to do it is to look at little tiny programs in your firm that maybe a few employees are doing or one office is doing, and it's seeing if it's really working for them. Maybe you could expand it. Barclays had such a program called Digital Eagles that started with 12 people. It now has 17,000 employees involved.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to do. The other thing is to focus on your customers and say, what really is important to my customers? And so of one firm, Avon, did that, and they realized their customers, which are women homemakers, are really interested directly or indirectly in breast cancer. So they developed a walk for breast cancer that became their signature program. Had nothing to do with what they were selling, but that came out of an analysis of what their customers are really involved with. And another thing to do is to look at the resources of your firm and say, what are we good at? Do we have distribution? Do we have a knowledge base in some segment or some locality? Uh, uh, do we have a communication budget or employee base? What resources do we have? And then how could we employ them in some area that'll do social good? So that sort of starts with the company. And 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 by the way, it's also useful not to think only in terms of starting a program, but to find a nonprofit that's going, and you can put your personality and resources to work in that context, and you can make them better than they already are. And then you get an established brand, you get an established program. A lot of the risk is done. You can start at scale. You don't have to start small. So that's something that should be kept in mind.
Okay. So,
Syed, to
sir,
build
yeah,
more on that, I would like to add one example from the Chinese
yes, ma'am.
market.
Sure.
And
Yeah, sure.
SK2, actually, a personal care category, what they have done is they worked on leftover women, which is a concept in China that if you don't get married after 30 years, you've been tagged as leftover women. So there is
Oh,
a matrimonial market in Shanghai where the entire briefing about the guys have been placed with their demography, with their materialistic possessions and everything. And then, these women, they feel very frustrated, of course, alienated from the society. So what they identified this problem, what you asked about the market research, they identified this problem and then they solved it by turning it around. While so what they have done is instead of displaying the guy's profile, they listed the profile of the girls and they spotted all their achievements which they have done. And you won't believe that, after a while, they invited their parents as well because this is a societal problem. So then they realized that how good their daughters are. And they felt so proud of their achievements and they became confident. As Professor Aaker has mentioned, there's nothing to do with what the personal care category products that they are selling, but you won't believe there was a growth of 140% in their
great.
category itself because they spotted the entire issue which was going on in the market. They provided the solution and they made a behavioral change in the mindset of the people. So that is, these are the three steps. If you follow, then you will make a mark in the market as well as in your brand.
Okay, great. So my next question is for Dr. Akar. Sir, you have done so much and you have written so much on strategy and you have written so much on brand. So once we, bring these two things together, strategy and brand. So what do you think about business strategy and its brand strategy? How these two things work in tandem? And are there any barriers to it, which a business house can overcome? Uh,
Well, yes, I am. In fact, my book on strategic market management was a Wiley book, and that has sold a third of a million copies, and that's what really got me into branding in the first place. Because when I was writing and teaching about strategy, I came to believe that companies were too focused on short-term financials, and they needed to instead build assets. And because of my work in strategy and market research and in advertising, it seemed like uh, a the type of asset I should work on, which is namely branding. That's how I got into branding to begin with. Um, but if I so anyway, I did these books where I defined what brand equity was. I sort of turned to how do you build a brand and how do you manage a portfolio. And now what I've done with my last few books is to try to show how you apply brand to important strategic areas. And two of the most important are disruptive innovation. And so I did a book called Owning Game Changing Subcategories, which Wiley is uh, going to republish in India soon. And then I did the book on social programs, because in both areas, the the books you read about both areas do not mention branding. They literally do not mention brands. But in both areas, branding is critical to
Sure.
having a good result. And we're in the social area, you've got all this unbranded, amorphous, ad hoc, undifferentiated approaches involving grants, volunteering, energy goals, and ESG reports. Well, so what we're saying is you need to put a brand on that, as Varsha said at the outset, and you have to brand the program, and that will do a lot of things that brands does, and most of all, it helps you communicate it. And when you can communicate it, then you can use it to help a business to provide an energy, image, and engagement lift to the business, and then that will provide you a reason for the business to support and give resources to allow you to grow and thrive. So yes, am really interested in strategy and branding, and again, I'm really struck by two of the most important strategic areas of business: disruptive innovation and social programs have don't use branding well or at all, and we want to change that.
Okay. Fine. Ma'am, there are, while, preparing the branding strategy, any company, must look at the do's and don'ts of branding. And Professor Aker has beautifully mentioned 5 or 6 must do's for branding. So, ma'am, would you like to throw some light on that? How discuss in the book with the help of an example, maybe? Yeah. What
Sure.
should we?
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, first thing is that, these are basically what we say nuts and bolts, and which we have to actually comply while using the concept. So, the first thing I just wanted to mention to build upon what you were discussing about the strategies which are ingrained in the business model. So it's not a branding strategy, it's not a brand strategy, it's not only for an operational purpose, but it is basically ingrained in the system and the businesses that we operate into. So that is the first point. Second is that why your business exists. What is the purpose of doing the business? That is something which all the companies have to keep in mind. These are all parts of our book which we are talking about. Third is, what business do you do? Are you like what examples which we were talking about? Are you selling soap? Are you actually solving a problem? Or you are actually talking about sustainability? For example, Mahindra spoke about, Haryali project in India, which is again connected to sustainability. Now, again, Mahindra is a conglomerate industry in which they operate different businesses. But the whole idea is that how sustainable they can provide in terms of their products, services. It's a very big initiative which Mahindra Group has taken. So they are not into a business of a particular product or service, but they are actually helping the society to grow further and solving the problem. So that's the third point. Then the fourth point is how committed you are in terms of making the societal, change and inspire people for those changes. So, for example, we talk about, different type of initiatives which the brands have taken in India. For example, Nestle has talked about Nanni Kali, which is again the girls' education, which they have provided to the underprivileged child, and around 1 lakh beneficiaries were there over a period of 20 years. So that is something. Nestle is again into the product category which serves different categories of products and brands. But the whole idea is that they wanted to take this initiative and ensure that the girls are educated, primarily coming from the underprivileged sectors, and they should be educated, and they actually succeeded very well. So those are the strategy must to be done into the business, because that is something which is very important. Besides that, I think Professor Aaker mentioned about developing the social program to brand it, to have a vision. For example, Tata's have a vision with which they actually sustain the business in Indian market. And similarly, there are different examples which we have quoted in the book about, SDFC as well. And they have taken different initiatives in order to reach out to the societal challenges and the issues which they are trying to sort out. So those are certain initiatives which are being taken. And besides that, the second last point is about developing the brand communities, which I think we have mentioned in the book as well. And I think I'll give you a global example, which I think Professor Aaker has also mentioned a couple of times, which is about Harley Group, which is Hawk. I think that is something which is very, deeply rooted to the bikers. And that is where the community connect is reflected. Similarly, there are a lot of initiatives where community connect is developed, and that is how you connect with the brand. And then, of course, you have signatures, social programs, which you talk about, like what Professor Aaker mentioned about Lifebuoy. And then the last point is about inclusion of those stakeholders, involving them, engaging with them. So if the more engagement you create while you are working on the social program, I think the better your brand would be. So it's not about I am great. That doesn't work in the markets, including India. But when the people say, when the stakeholders says that, wow, what a great brand you are, that is where your branding stands different from other competitors. So those are certain things which you have to keep in mind, especially for the Indian market, because Indian market is more or less what they look for is the emotional connect, the social connect, the benefits which the brands are giving to the individual as well as the community as a whole, because we come from a socialistic and collectivistic culture. So the culture is ingrained in the people, and the channels have changed. Of course, we use WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram, but still the community, communal connect, the familial connect is still there. Though we have global orientation about the brand, we have individualistic perspective, but those connections which are deeply rooted through the values, which are rooted through the belief system, has not changed yet. So that is something which the brand has to understand, and then they have to leverage it so that it is the benefit of the all the stakeholders while including them in the process.
Thank you, ma'am, for this answer. Ma'am, when we talk about India, I mean, here also we are specifically talking about India. Before 1990, we had a closed economy, and post liberalization, we had an open economy. And since then, we are following that those economical principles here. So, ma'am, can you throw some light or share your experiences? I mean, what kind of branding that used to be there in use by our traditional companies, and post liberalization, what they have learned from the multinationals, and is there any company, I mean, was there any intentional branding that traditional companies were following, and after liberalization, what as I've told asked you earlier, that what they have learned from the multinationals, and is there any example of a company which is leading the way, and what kind of benefits that companies, are harnessing from that strategy?
Sure, that's a very comprehensive question. Thank you, Sayed, for asking. And I was smiling because this is exactly what we have written in the book. And I'm going to elaborate that further. Before, you're talking about three eras, okay?
Yeah,
So then the first era when people were actually producing products. There was no concept of branding as such. They were producing the products, and there was a selling concept in the market. So I was producing like soaps and shampoo as a manufacturer, and that was being sold in the market while they were manufacturing it. So that was the concept. Then what happened eventually, people understood, no, that is not good. We have to start the branding. We have to make the brands. And of course, Unilever, P&G, and everything came into place, which is what you mentioned about the liberalization, the second era. The lot of companies from different parts of the world entered into the Indian market. The key learning was that I cannot sell the products on the basis of functional attributes then I have to move towards the subtle hedonic attributes. I have to make more sense to the lifestyle of the people. And that is how you will be connected. For example, earlier there was Hammam was used, Bajaj scooter was used, and these were like, Rasna brand. These were all functional attributes that were connected to the Indian market. Now, another example where there's a lot of learning is coming is Unilever. Unilever has so many brands, but the
yeah,
kind of campaigns, branding, which they used to do earlier is very different now. So the whole idea is that, when after post liberalization, the key important aspects which we have learned from the Indian market is that, well, you are making good product, but that is not enough for the consumers. And Indian consumers, let me tell you, are very demanding.
yeah,
They are very value conscious. Earlier, they were price conscious. Now they are very value conscious. And they want something beyond the functional attributes. The good thing is that they're ready to pay higher as long as you're able to serve their needs
right.
contextually. So that is something which is very important. And then now we are talking about the third era, where we are talking about the generation, Z, generation Y, and these are all tech born people, and these people really understand the global orientation. They understand that the problems which exist in the world, which I think Professor Aaker has listed at the beginning. There is a lot of disparity, there is a lot of issues with the socio-economic class, climate issues, and all of that. These are ingrained in them, in their mindset at the beginning. So what they are looking out from the brands is not only the functional, hedonic, subtle attributes, but what is the point of differentiation that the brands are making in those changes. So the
Okay.
mindset is very different. And I am catering to a different Indian now, an Indian consumer as a brand. So we need to understand that, Indian market has also evolved over a period of time. So the brands also have to evolve. It's like simultaneous process. As the consumers evolve, the brands evolves and the businesses evolves. So that is something which is quite interesting to see that how these brands have evolved. And that's how I gave you the example of Unilever, because Unilever has evolved over a period of time in Indian market.
Okay. Great. So, ma'am, when we talk about global economies, so we have this global village. We call it global village now. So every company is working in every other country. So, ma'am, where do you see? I mean, it's a simple question. What is the future of purpose-driven branding in India? It's for both of you.
Yeah, I would request Professor Aaker to share his views, and then I'll come in.
Well,
The few.
I've really been so struck by the interest in India for my books and ideas. I've had audiences of 200,000 in one of my talks, and so it's very um, it's very surprising to me that there is such interest in my ideas, and of course, the idea that is most prominent right now is the ideas from my newest book, The Pursuit of Purpose-Driven Branding. And so I can't help but feel that there's a sort of an eagerness to listen to these ideas and to consider them in their own business. So I'm very hopeful that in India we'll see a ramp up of the ability to business to address these incredible social challenges that we're facing, and I hope that our this book and our efforts will help.
Sure. So I think I agree with Professor Aaker, and the future of purpose-driven branding in India is pretty high. As I mentioned, it was already there in our system, culture, and heritage. It's just that we are providing a more systematic and branded approach for the social programs in which the businesses can be operated. And this is very important now because we are talking to this set of consumers who are been exposed globally, who are very tech savvy. They understand the issues that exist at the global level as well as at the local level. And also, the whole idea of business has changed. Let me tell you in simple words. It's not only selling and buying, it's beyond that. So, that is something which is very important for all the stakeholders. And the future of this book and the whole idea about this book is to help all the stakeholders so that they can systematically work together and create those win-win situations for the societies and communities in the Indian market.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, just last question for both of you. Not only as a publisher of your book, but also as an audience for your book. What are your plans for the future? I mean, what kind of books you are planning with Professor Aaker for the Indian audience in the future?
Uh, well, we have 4 books. My last 4 books are all making a different kind of statement toward branding. I've already mentioned the one on disruptive innovation, owning game-changing subcategories, and before that, there was one on storytelling and the role of stories in business when they're facing an environment of media clutter and information overload. stories break through. So it's really important to understand how to develop signature stories and use them to break through and communicate. And finally, there's a book called Aaker on branding that kind of summarizes all my work on branding, and so it becomes a very efficient and compact way to understand my work, which is spread out through so many books and so many pages. And so I think the plan is Varsha is going to adopt these books to the Indian market, and in one by one we will introduce them.
Thank you, sir. Would you also like to answer this?
Yeah, so as Professor Aaker has mentioned, we are super excited about the different types of books after this subcategories of brands as well as storytelling and Aaker branding. So the whole idea is to relate that with the Indian market, to provide those initiatives which companies are already working on, and to provide them a more structured way of changing the mindset within India and outside, so that they can actually do a better business and serve the societies and communities in a better way, and give back to those entire set of people who are actually looking for some help from the businesses. So that's the whole idea of doing it. So probably in the next 1 to 2 years, you would see these books coming out in the Indian market, and we are super excited about it because
Okay.
these are going to be the game changers in the branding world for sure.
Okay. Ma'am, I would just like to tell you here, both of you here, that we are also at Wiley, we are also super excited to be part of your journey. And we would also like to publish more books with you, so especially Aaker on branding. We have already started receiving lots of queries and lots of buzz around that. So we would like to build upon that. And thank
Sure,
you
we
very
will
much, both
take
of
it
you.
up
Yeah,
very soon with you. Thank you so much for being so kind and supportive, publisher. It
yeah.
is a pleasure to work with you.
Same here, ma'am.